My girlfriend said, I donated your sperm without telling you. Congrats, you're a bio dad. I replied, that's illegal. Then I called a lawyer, filed charges, and watched as the investigation redefined consent. For all of US.it happened on a Sunday morning. We were having coffee, her in my hoodie, me half asleep, scrolling through emails, when she said it. So casually I thought I'd misheard. You're gonna think this is crazy, but my friend Jenna needed help having a baby, and she couldn't afford IVF. So, I helped her. Helped her? I asked, not looking up yet. She smiled, that nervous, performative smile she used when she thought she was about to be praised for something brave. Yeah, I donated for her. Well, technically you did. I looked up then. What do you mean I did? She exhaled, like she was bracing for me to overreact. You had that test kit in the bathroom from the clinic, the sample cup thing? I just took it. She used it. She's pregnant now. Congrats, you're a bio dad. The room went completely still. Not loud, not chaotic, just heavy. I stared at her for a long time before I said anything. You stole a medical sample? Oh, come on. It's not like that, she said quickly. It's not like you didn't want kids. You said you'd make a great dad one day. I didn't yell, didn't throw anything, didn't even stand up. I just said quietly, that's illegal. She blinked. What? No, it's not. It's not that serious. She really wanted a baby. It's a gift. It's reproductive fraud, I said. And you just confessed to it out loud. On camera. She froze. Because she knew. I had home security cameras in the living room. Not hidden, just standard Nest cams. Always recording. Her smile vanished. You wouldn't. I'm not going to yell, I said. I'm going to make a phone call. I called my lawyer first. Then the police. Then, 2 hours later, I sent an email to Jenna, the friend. It was short, precise, unemotional. Cease and desist notice. Unauthorized use of biological material. This email serves as official notification that you have been identified as a party in an act of reproductive theft and medical misappropriation. You are hereby instructed to cease all attempts to carry or utilize biological material obtained without consent. Further correspondence will proceed through counsel. By that evening, both women were under investigation, and I had given my attorney the camera footage, text messages, and the clinic's documentation proving the sample was for a medical procedure scheduled later that week. The detective assigned to my case said something I'll never forget. Most people would have lost their mind. You handled this like you were writing a manual. Because that's how you win, I said. Not by screaming, by documenting. The detective called me 2 days later. His voice was neutral, clipped, professional. Mr. Reeves, we've reviewed the footage you provided. We'll need you to come in for a statement. Of course, I said. He hesitated, then added, I don't think I've seen a case exactly like this before. Neither had I. At the precinct, everything felt surreal. The fluorescent lights, the quiet hum of printers, the detached tone of the officer taking notes while I explained that my girlfriend had stolen a sperm sample. I said the words slowly, deliberately, because even to my own ears, they sounded insane. But facts are simple things. And I had plenty of them. The sample had been obtained from a licensed fertility clinic, sealed and stored for my upcoming procedure. The timestamp from my home security footage showed her taking it. Text messages between her and Jenna confirmed they'd planned it weeks in advance. And the clinic's own record proved that the sample was intended for a procedure that required my signed consent, which never happened. The detective looked at me and said quietly, you know, most people wouldn't have the presence of mind to gather all this. Most people don't get advance notice they'll be violated, I said. I did. Within a week, both women were under investigation for reproductive theft and medical fraud. And because Jenna was now pregnant, Child Protective Services became involved. They weren't investigating her for the pregnancy itself, but for the environment that created it. Deceit, coercion, and theft. It got complicated fast. DNA was tested. My consent documents were reviewed. And eventually, I got a call from my attorney. They've confirmed you are the biological father. I said nothing for a while. Then, and legally? You're not responsible, she said. The act was criminal. The state recognizes that you never gave informed consent to procreate. You have no financial or parental obligations, and they're treating your cooperation as part of the prosecution. It was the coldest comfort I've ever felt. The hardest part came later, When CPS asked if I'd be willing to provide a statement about what kind of people these women were. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't editorialize. I told the truth. One of them wanted control. The other wanted to play savior. Neither understood consent. A month later, my ex, Laura, called me. Unknown number. I picked up, mostly out of morbid curiosity. Her voice was trembling. You ruined our lives. No, I said quietly. You ruined your own when you decided to play God with someone else's body. I didn't mean. Intent doesn't erase violation. Then I hung up. I didn't follow the case obsessively, but my lawyer kept me informed. The friend, Jenna, was charged first. Medical fraud, unauthorized use of genetic material, violation of consent statutes. She entered a plea deal, probation, mandatory counseling, and full cooperation. Laura wasn't so lucky. The DA added conspiracy to her charges after seeing their text history. Her lawyer tried to spin it as a misguided act of compassion. It didn't work. She was sentenced to a year of probation and fined heavily. Her professional license, she worked in healthcare, was suspended. 6 months after everything unraveled, I received a letter from the state attorney's office. Your cooperation was instrumental in closing a case that will likely redefine consent statutes in this district. Your composure and documentation provided clarity in a legally complex matter. At the bottom, case closed. No further action required. I read it 3 times. Then I filed it in a folder marked Personal 2025 and locked it in a drawer. That's how closure looks sometimes. Like paperwork, not catharsis. But here's what nobody prepares you for. Even after all that, a small part of me wondered about the child. Not out of guilt or longing, but curiosity. Somewhere out there, a child existed who shared my DNA, but not my story. And I had to make peace with that. My therapist said something that stuck. You didn't create that child. You created boundaries. That's what makes you a parent to your own life, not someone else's. That line saved me more than once. A year later, I moved cities. New job, new apartment, new peace. I don't date easily now, but I trust myself again. That's something. And if there's a moral here, it's not vengeance or justice. It's precision. Because sometimes the only way to survive madness is to treat it like a case file, not a heartbreak. Update 1 that it's been about 18 months since the investigation ended. Sometimes it feels like it all happened to someone else, some version of me that still flinched when people said the word trust. I've moved twice since then. New city, new circle, new rhythm. I don't talk about the case anymore unless someone specifically asks. Most people don't. I don't blame them. No one knows what to say when your story sounds like a legal precedent. Last week, I got a certified letter. Government envelope. Department seal. Same weight and texture as the one that closed my case the first time. Inside was a formal notice from the Office of Child Services. They were notifying me, as a matter of legal protocol, that Jenna's parental rights had been voluntarily terminated. The child had been placed in a stable, two-parent adoptive household, and no further involvement from me would ever be required or permitted. At the bottom, a single line read, "For record purposes only, you are listed as biological father. No further contact or obligation exists." It was bureaucratic, impersonal, almost cold. And yet, I sat there staring at it for 20 minutes, not because of sadness, but because of finality. That was the last thread. Cut clean. I folded the letter, slid it into the same drawer where I'd kept the first one, and closed it. Same motion, same sound. That click of a lock that somehow sounds like breathing again. That night, I walked down to the pier near my apartment. The air smelled like salt and diesel fuel, the kind of scent that feels both grounding and temporary. And for the first time since that morning in the kitchen, that "congrats, you're a bio dad" morning, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Not at her, not at the system, not even at the universe. Just done. 2 days later, an email arrived. No subject line, no sender name, just initials. It was from Lara's mother. "Mr. Reeves, I wanted you to know that Laura is in treatment. She's working, rebuilding, and she's told us that what she did to you was the lowest point of her life. You don't have to forgive her, but please know she's not the same person anymore. You handled what she did with more decency than she deserved. I wanted to thank you for that, as a mother." I didn't reply, not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood that my part of that story was already finished. Still, I printed the email, folded it neatly, and put it in the same drawer with the letters. Not as a trophy, as documentation of survival. My therapist once told me, healing isn't when you stop remembering. It's when the memory stops hijacking your nervous system. He was right. Now, when I think of that whole chapter, the theft, the investigation, the headlines, the hearings, I don't feel anger or pride. Just clarity. Because I didn't lose anything that day. I kept the one thing that mattered, my ability to respond without becoming what I hated. Last weekend, I met someone new. Her name's Isabel. She's a civil attorney, ironically enough. We had dinner, talked about everything except law, and laughed about how people underestimate quiet ones. When she asked what I do, I said, I work in logistics, and I've learned a lot about evidence chains. She smiled. Sounds like you're hard to lie to. Not hard, I said, just unwilling to be surprised twice. I don't know what's next, and that's the point. I don't need to. I stopped needing to turn everything into a lesson or a headline. Some stories just close themselves. And when they do, peace doesn't sound like applause. It sounds like paper folding neatly into a drawer. Final update, it's been 4 years since that morning. 4 years since a cup on a bathroom counter turned into an investigation, a trial, and a lesson in how fragile trust can be when someone mistakes your life for their experiment. You'd think time erases it. It doesn't. But it reshapes it. The sharp edges dull into outlines. The chaos becomes data. And what's left is something that doesn't hurt, just informs. I'm married now. Not to Isabel. We dated for a while, then drifted apart amicably. She once told me I was the calmest storm she'd ever met, and I took that as the compliment it was. My wife, Rachel, is a journalist. We met at a conference about ethical reporting. She asked me what I did, and I said, I used to be a case file. She laughed, but later, when I told her the truth, she didn't flinch. She just said, then you already know how to tell the difference between accountability and cruelty. That was the first time I felt understood without having to explain my history. We live in a quiet neighborhood now. Small house, plenty of light, two dogs who think the world ends at the fence line. And for the first time in my life, I don't feel like I'm waiting for the next crisis. I just wake up, make coffee, and exist. That's what peace is, not forgetting, just no longer bracing. Last month, I got a message request on LinkedIn. I almost ignored it until I saw the name. Jenna. Her profile photo was different. Older, thinner, eyes tired but clear. The message read, Hi, Mr. Reeves. I wanted to say thank you. The child, I can't call her mine, not legally, but I still get updates through her adoptive family. She's thriving. They're good people. I know what I did was unforgivable, but you being calm instead of cruel changed more lives than you know. I've been volunteering at a reproductive rights advocacy group for 2 years now. You don't owe me forgiveness, but I hope you know I learned what consent really means, and I teach it every day. Thank you for setting a boundary that made me better. I didn't reply, not because I didn't care, but because it was complete. The story had already ended. This was just an echo confirming that. I sat at my desk for a long time after reading it. Not sad, just aware of how far life had moved since that morning and how much quieter my mind had become. That night, I told Rachel. She listened, nodded, and said, You don't have to respond. Sometimes closure doesn't need witnesses. Then she took my hand and said, You didn't just survive it. You shaped it into something ethical. I laughed softly. It's strange. I didn't set out to be anyone's example. That's what makes you one, she said. Now, when I think about it all, the violation, the legal documents, the hearings, the labels, I don't see it as a tragedy anymore. It's just a chapter. A reminder that calm isn't passive, it's a decision. And sometimes, that decision changes the room more than anger ever could. There's a drawer in my study. In it are three things. The original letter from the state, the email from Lara's mother, and Jenna's message, printed out, folded once. Not trophies, just proof that even when the world stops making sense, you still get to decide how you respond. Every few months, I reread one line from the state's final letter, the last sentence before the case number. No further action required. I've started to see it not as a bureaucratic phrase, but as a philosophy. No further action required. No revenge. No bitterness. No unfinished business. Just living. Final line. Some stories don't end with justice. They end when you stop needing it.